January does not arrive for Libra with loud changes or obvious disruptions. It comes quietly, like a soft breeze moving through a familiar room, not disturbing anything in its place, yet enough for you to notice that the air has shifted. You may still wake up to the same mornings, walk the same streets, tell the same everyday stories, but somewhere inside, something no longer feels the same. Libra begins to sense this shift, not through logic, but through feeling. A feeling that is real, deep, and difficult to name at first. It might show up as longer silences when you're sitting next to someone, or a moment when you pause in the middle of a thought and wonder why your heart feels heavier, even though nothing new seems to have happened. The things you once pushed aside because of busyness, responsibility, or the habit of enduring are now quietly knocking at the door again. These are not intense emotions. They do not rush in. They arrive slowly, steadily, with patience, like early morning light slipping through a narrow crack, not forcing its way in, not demanding attention, simply staying long enough that you can no longer ignore it. Libra is used to holding balance for everything, used to placing other people's needs equal to or even above your own. But at this moment, you begin to realize that parts of you have been left unattended for far too long. You may notice old memories returning, moments you once believed were already settled. Not to blame anyone, not to pull you backward, but as a quiet reminder that those emotions were never fully heard. There were sorrows hidden behind calm smiles, desires held back out of fear of disappointing others, boundaries that were never set because you believed silence would preserve harmony. This subtle shift is not here to weaken you. It is here to return you to honesty with yourself. Libra begins to understand that emotions are not something to fix or deny. Emotions are signals. They are the language your inner world uses to tell you that something needs adjustment. When you feel uneasy, it is not because you are too sensitive. When you feel tired, it is not because you are not strong enough. It is because you have been carrying too much that does not belong to you. Some evenings in January, Libra may sit very still. No music, no advice. Just a silence long enough to finally hear yourself. In that quiet space, you begin to understand that real balance does not come from pleasing everyone. It comes from no longer betraying your own emotions. You do not need to change everything right away. You do not need to make any big decisions yet. All that is required is acknowledging that something inside you is moving and allowing it to exist. This change is like underground water. No one sees it. No one talks about it. Yet it is quietly softening the hardened layers beneath the surface. And when the ground becomes soft enough, new things finally have space to grow. Not by force, but naturally. Not through pain, but through honesty. Libra enters January with a new intuition. You begin to sense more clearly where you feel at peace and where you feel depleted. The questions that arise no longer carry anxiety. They feel more like invitations. Invitations to slow down, to live more truthfully, and to place yourself where you truly belong in your own life. And as you allow yourself to pause in this way, something important begins to take shape, gently but unmistakably, guiding you forward onto a path where clarity will soon replace confusion and truth will gradually move to the center of every choice you make. And it is right there in that space that Libra begins to feel a subtle but very real inner sway. Not a dramatic event, not a sudden shock, but something more like the inner compass, gently trembling, not pointing fully in any one direction, yet no longer standing still the way it once did. You start to realize that the real challenge right now is not the person in front of you, not their words, not their actions, but the way you listen to and respond to the movements happening inside yourself. There are moments when you still want to believe in what you hope for. You hope that everything will work itself out. You hope that the other person will eventually understand. You hope that the silence is only temporary, that the unease you feel is just overthinking, and that hope is not wrong. Libra has always believed in repair, in reconciliation, in balance being restored with enough patience. But alongside that hope, another layer of awareness begins to speak, very softly, almost imperceptibly, yet persistent. It does not speak in words. It speaks through your body, through the heaviness in your chest, through the quiet exhaustion that follows conversations that appear completely normal on the surface, through the way you find yourself reassuring your own heart far more than should ever be necessary. Libra stands between these two currents. On one side is what you want to believe, because it is familiar, because it feels safe, because it does not demand immediate change. On the other side is what you are actually sensing, even if you are not yet ready to name it. And this tension is what creates the inner sway. Not because you are weak, but because you are perceptive enough to feel both realities at once. This is both the gift and the challenge of being Libra. At this stage, truth no longer hides as deeply as it once did. It begins to surface through ordinary details. Someone speaks beautifully, yet fails to show up when you need them. You are always the one adjusting your emotions to keep the atmosphere calm. You feel like you are waiting for something, but you are no longer sure what you are waiting for. These signals are not here to hurt you. They are here to ask a single question. Are you willing to be honest with yourself? You may begin to see that what causes your inner conflict is not a choice between right and wrong. It is a choice between truth and self-comfort. Self-comfort eases the moment. Truth creates lasting peace. And to reach that truth, Libra needs a very specific kind of clarity. Not clarity that judges, not clarity that controls emotion, but clarity that refuses to deny what you are genuinely feeling. You might begin by asking yourself very gently, without pressure, why do you have to work so hard to maintain balance in certain situations? Why do some relationships require constant waiting, constant patience, constant self-sacrifice? And why, despite all your effort, you still feel unseen? These questions do not need immediate answers. They are like small stones dropped into water, creating ripples that spread slowly, yet cannot be stopped. The more you allow yourself to feel, the clearer it becomes that this inner sway is not pulling you backward. It is helping you realign your direction, so you no longer move forward on hope alone. You begin walking alongside truth, as it reveals itself, little by little, through the very ordinary choices you make each day. And as truth begins to surface in this way, Libra slowly looks back at the road just traveled with a different kind of awareness. There is less blame now, less need to explain yourself to anyone, only a calm acknowledgement that for a long time you carried more than a balanced heart was ever meant to carry. There were seasons when your life felt wrapped in uncertainty, not because answers did not exist, but because they always arrived halfway, never painful enough to make you leave immediately, yet never secure enough to let you truly rest. You lived in that in-between space for too long, where everything was promised to get better, clearer, different, just not yet. And Libra, with your instinct to keep the peace and your belief in balance, you chose to stay a little longer. And then a little longer still. There were relationships that quietly asked you to prove your worth, not through words, but through patience, through always being the more understanding one, the more flexible one, the one willing to adjust yourself to fit someone else's limits. You gave so much, sometimes not because you had excess to give, but because you believed that if you tried hard enough, recognition would eventually come. Yet the further you went, the clearer it became that having to prove you deserve love is a heavy burden to carry, even when the outside world sees you as calm and composed. And then there were moments when you stood among many people, yet felt deeply alone. Not because you lacked company, but because real connection was missing. You listened, you supported, you showed up. Yet rarely did anyone slow down long enough to ask if you were okay. Libra became so used to being the one who holds the rhythm, who keeps things balanced, that at times you forgot you also need to be held. That loneliness was never loud. It gathered quietly, layer by layer, each time you told yourself everything would be fine, even while you knew how tired you truly were. There were moments when you chose forgiveness, not because the wound was small, but because you did not want to carry resentment. Forgiveness became a way to keep moving without making life heavier than it already was. But sometimes, that forgiveness came at the cost of dismissing your own feelings. And there were also moments when you chose to walk away, not in anger, but in silence. A decision shaped by many sleepless nights, many quiet questions about whether you were being too harsh, Whether you stayed or whether you left, one truth remains undeniable. You endured more than was necessary. Not because you lacked boundaries, but because you hoped things would change if you were patient just a little longer. Now, as you look back, Libra begins to understand that this exhaustion was not a sign of failure. It was a signal that it is time to live differently, a way of living where you no longer strain yourself to keep the whole world in balance, but allow your own peace to stand alongside everything else. So the steps ahead do not feel as heavy as before. They carry something softer, something honest, a lightness that feels real and deeply human. And from that very real sense of relief, Libra moves into a different state of January, one where everything seems to slow down by a single beat. Not because life suddenly becomes less busy, but because inside, you stop pushing yourself to chase what is still unclear. A pause appears naturally, like placing your feet back on the ground after a long stretch of walking. No urgency, no need to prove that you are okay. You begin to allow yourself to remain in the present moment, to observe instead of reacting, to listen instead of trying to fix. Libra is no longer in a rush. There is no longer the pressure to decide immediately, to respond immediately, to keep everything looking balanced right away. What is remarkable is that this slowing down does not bring confusion. Instead, it brings a different kind of clarity. A clarity that is not sharp or cold, but warm, gentle enough to help you see what was once hidden by hope and the habit of endurance. You begin asking questions you once avoided, not with blame, but with sincere curiosity. Does this relationship truly nourish me, or does it survive only through one-sided effort? Is this waiting still worth it, or does it simply prolong a state of exhaustion I've carried for far too long? These questions do not create panic, because you are no longer looking to others for the answers. You let them remain, allowing your own emotions to speak first. In this slower rhythm, Libra begins to understand that peace does not come from everything being fine. It comes from no longer convincing yourself that everything is fine. There are very ordinary moments, sitting alone with a cup of tea growing cold, or turning off your phone earlier than usual, when you suddenly notice you are breathing more deeply. Not because the problems are gone, but because you are no longer tensing yourself against your feelings. You allow yourself to feel fully, even the parts that are uncomfortable. And in that quiet space, old memories return gently. Not loudly, not dramatically. A familiar face, a message that was never answered. A connection you thought had already closed. Some people from the past may reappear, not to pull you backward, but to set something down that was left unfinished. Not to test you, but to give you the chance to look again from a different place. You are no longer who you once were, and that alone changes the meaning of these encounters. Libra may notice that what once stirred deep longing no longer moves you the same way. Not because you have grown cold, but because you understand your worth more clearly. There are conversations that no longer need to continue, apologies that no longer need to be heard, and final silences that carry healing, because they confirm you did all you could. There is nothing left to hold on to. The slower pace of January helps you see your own boundaries. Not boundaries meant to divide, but boundaries meant to protect. You begin to understand that love does not mean unlimited sacrifice, and patience does not mean enduring what continues to wound you. By asking these questions honestly, you do not lose the natural gentleness of Libra. You give it something stronger, a solid foundation. Beneath this quiet surface, a very subtle movement is taking place, a sense that you are standing in front of a door. You do not need to open it yet, but you know with certainty that you are ready not to return to the old corridors. You do not need to decide everything this month. What matters more is that you have learned how to pause without guilt, how to see clearly without judgment. And within that pause, a new form of clarity begins to take shape. Not loud, not forceful, but steady enough to guide you forward, more gently, more truthfully, and no longer carrying the weight that was never yours to begin with. And it is precisely when you stop forcing yourself to move faster that life begins to shift in a very different way. Late January carries a clear sense of reversal, not because everything suddenly explodes, but because what once floated in uncertainty no longer has a place to hide. You can feel it in the smallest details, in the way someone begins to reveal their hesitation, in how a familiar promise no longer stirs you the way it once did. There is no longer a comfortable ambiguity, no longer empty spaces filled in by hope alone. Libra starts to see that some relationships existed more because of your patience than because of shared commitment. Half-formed connections, where you were always waiting to see if they would show up, if they would keep their word, if they truly chose you, or simply chose the sense of safety you provided. Before, you may have accepted this as part of maintaining balance. But now, that balance begins to tilt. Not because others have changed, but because you are no longer willing to carry the heavier side alone. There is a moment of unmistakable clarity when you realize that words no longer hold weight without action beside them. Beautiful promises, familiar explanations, requests for more time, all begin to lose their power. Not because you have become suspicious, but because you have learned to recognize truth through experience, not just through what is said. And this quiet awareness allows relationships built on ambiguity to dissolve on their own. No arguments, no dramatic conclusions. Libra's turning point does not come from a dramatic decision. It comes from a subtle shift in position. You are no longer standing in a place where you wait to be chosen, no longer sitting still, hoping someone will recognize your value at the right moment. Instead, you rise from within, with a calm clarity. Clear about what brings you peace, clear about what drains you. And from that clarity, you begin to choose, not to win, not to compete, but to live in alignment. There may be moments of regret, not because your decision was wrong, but because you realize how much time you gave to what never offered an equal return. That regret does not pull you backward. It feels more like a gentle farewell, a way of closing a chapter where every lesson has already been learned. There is no need for anger, only the decision to stop investing your heart where it is no longer nourished. Libra begins to understand that choice is not always an act of removal. Sometimes, choice is simply stopping. Stopping the effort, stopping the explanations, stopping the waiting. And in the space created by that pause, a new sense of freedom appears. You no longer have to guess what others are thinking or what they want. You return to the only question that truly matters. Does this still align with who I am? By late January, you may feel as though you are standing at a crossroads. No large signs, no pressure to move, just a deep certainty within. A certainty that you no longer accept relationships that speak endlessly but act very little. No longer accept half measures dressed up as hope. And as you stand firmly in your choice, you change more than how others treat you. You change how you treat yourself. From here, everything begins to move in a different direction. Quietly, decisively. Opening a new space where respect and commitment are no longer things you must ask for, but something that naturally appears when you finally choose the right place for yourself. And when those choices are finally placed down with calm acceptance instead of hesitation, Libra begins to sense a new direction slowly opening in front of you. Not a path that is completely unfamiliar, but one that has always been there, only hidden before because you never had enough space to truly see it. The clarity you have just touched feels like the sky after a rainstorm, not needing bright sunlight, only the absence of clouds, and suddenly everything becomes easier to see. One of the first things you may notice is how the relationships around you begin to shift, not because you're asking for more, but because you are no longer accepting less than what you deserve. A healthy connection does not arrive through urgency or polished promises. It comes quietly, through the sense of safety you feel beside someone, through not having to guess their intentions, through not needing to reshape yourself to fit someone else's expectations. You are allowed to be fully yourself, and instead of tension, that creates closeness. Libra begins to realize that when the foundation is solid, commitment no longer feels frightening. It becomes a safe space, one both people step into with willingness and respect. No longer a commitment meant to hold someone in place, but a commitment that allows growth together. And the most beautiful part is this: you no longer need to convince anyone. You no longer need to wait for clarity. It arrives naturally as a result of standing in the right place for yourself. This new direction shows itself not only in matters of the heart, but in the way you move through your own life. It may be your work, a personal project, or simply how you arrange your everyday rhythms. You begin choosing what aligns with your natural pace, instead of chasing someone else's standards. The efforts that once left you exhausted are replaced by focus in the right places. You are not doing less. You are no longer doing the wrong things. Libra starts to understand that success does not have to come with constant tension or excessive sacrifice. Some achievements only appear when you stop bracing yourself. When you stop proving, stop comparing, stop questioning whether you are enough. You already are, from the moment you chose to respect yourself. And from that foundation, everything you build carries a different kind of energy, more stable, more enduring, and most importantly, it does not cost you yourself along the way. A new feeling begins to take shape inside you, the feeling of being seen for your true value without having to demand it. You start encountering people who recognize you where you stand, not where they want you to become. Opportunities arrive quietly, but at the right time. They do not rush you into decisions. They invite you forward with intention and clarity. This new path does not promise a journey without challenges. But unlike before, you are no longer walking alone in doubt. You move forward with a clear sense that you are exactly where you belong. And when you stand in the right place, you no longer need to overextend yourself to be seen. The light you carry is already enough to guide the way and draw in what truly matches you. From here on, every step Libra takes is no longer a race to prove worth. It becomes a path of maturity, where each step feels lighter, more grounded, and deeply rooted in respect for your own life. And as you move forward with that feeling of standing in the right place, something very quiet, yet deeply steady, begins to unfold. The heavy, uncertain period you once carried does not disappear all at once. Instead, it slowly comes to a close, like a door being shut through understanding, not force. Libra begins to notice that you no longer wake up bracing yourself for the day ahead. Your heart feels lighter, no longer weighed down by questions without answers. Some mornings, you find yourself breathing more deeply without trying, as if your body has relearned how to trust the safety of the present moment. Healing does not arrive as a miracle. It comes through very ordinary changes. You eat more slowly. You sleep more deeply. You stop pushing yourself to be endlessly available. The boundaries you set do not create distance. They create respect. Light begins to return, not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer standing in the shadow of what no longer belongs to you. That light is gentle, never blinding, just enough to let you see your own reflection with the same compassion you once reserved for everyone else. Libra settles into a more stable rhythm, one where emotions are no longer pulled back and forth by external forces. You no longer need to control everything to feel secure. This sense of stability comes from within, from knowing what you are building and why you are building it. Your choices are no longer driven by fear of loss, but by a desire to protect what is healthy. You do not rush forward, yet every step carries weight, direction, and full presence. In relationships, the difference becomes clear. The connections that remain are not loud or performative, but they endure. There is real listening, real presence when it matters, and enough space for each person to remain fully themselves. You no longer wonder where you stand in someone else's heart. The feeling of safety answers that for you, and if new relationships appear, they arrive with a natural rhythm, never asking you to change your essence just to fit. In work and personal pursuits, Libra begins building with a long view. You no longer choose temporary solutions just to ease immediate pressure. You choose solid foundations, even when they take time to form. You may move more slowly than others, but you no longer have to return to fix rushed decisions. Each effort is placed exactly where it belongs, and because of that, it carries lasting energy. You do not burn out in your work because you are no longer working against your own values. At times, you look back and realize how much you have grown quietly. not through major victories, but through learning how to care for yourself. Healing for Libra is no longer an abstract idea. It is the ability to stay with your emotions without fear, to say no when necessary, to say yes only when your heart is truly ready, to stop feeling guilty for choosing your own peace. This phase brings a very real sense of ease. Not because every problem is solved, but because you no longer allow them to occupy all the space in your life. You understand that life will still have moments of imbalance, and you also know that you now have the foundation to move through them. The stability you are building does not depend on circumstance. It rests on the healthiest relationship you have, the relationship with yourself. And within that stability, a quiet confidence begins to grow. No need to prove, no need to compare, no need to rush toward anything just to feel enough. You are enough when you are fully present. You are enough when you live in alignment with your values. From here on, everything Libra continues to build carries the breath of longevity. No longer a temporary fix for short-term emptiness, but a foundation for a balanced life. A life where light does not simply come and go, but stays, quietly, steadily, walking with you along the road ahead. And as everything slowly settles into that steady rhythm, a message remains with Libra, simple, yet deeply meaningful, like a quiet reminder you can carry with you along the road ahead. Do not ignore your emotions, not because emotions are always right, but because they are always honest. They do not try to please you. They do not attempt to hide the truth. They simply reflect with clarity what is happening inside you, even when you are not yet ready to admit it. For Libra, imbalance rarely arrives loudly. It comes with subtlety, a slight loss of rhythm within, a tiredness without a clear reason, a moment when you no longer feel in the right place within things that once felt familiar. This is not a sign to blame yourself or to force yourself to adjust again. It is a signal that something is no longer aligned and that listening must come before moving forward. Libra has always known how to keep the peace, to be the bridge, to balance opposing sides. But this journey teaches you something deeper. True balance cannot be built by abandoning yourself. When you ignore your emotions, you may preserve calm on the surface, but inwardly, you drift farther away from your own truth. And that distance, no matter how small, grows quietly over time. Being honest with your emotions does not mean letting them control every decision. It means allowing yourself to fully feel before you choose. It means acknowledging when something hurts instead of rushing to justify it. It means allowing sadness, disappointment, or fatigue without accusing yourself of being weak or overly sensitive. Within that permission, you begin to reclaim the authority you unknowingly gave away long ago. Stopping the habit of defending what causes you pain is not an act of hardness. It is an act of care. You do not need to find new reasons to remain in situations that drain you. You do not need to wait for others to admit their mistakes before you are allowed to move forward. When you pause, listen to your emotions, and respect your boundaries, you do not lose your natural gentleness. You simply place it where it belongs. And from that place, the right decisions begin to take shape. Not perfect decisions, but decisions that are right for you. Decisions that do not require constant explanation to yourself afterward. Decisions that allow you, when you look back, to exhale knowing you did not betray your heart. In this light, happiness is no longer a distant destination you must wait for. It appears in the moment you choose to live truthfully, even if that choice does not please everyone. Libra begins to understand that happiness is not always joy. Sometimes it is simply relief. The relief of no longer straining to maintain balance for what no longer belongs to you. The relief of being in relationships, work, and environments where you do not have to shrink or hide parts of yourself to be accepted. As this journey comes to a close, there is no applause, no dramatic moment, only a Libra standing more firmly with greater clarity and more kindness toward yourself. You no longer walk forward on the fragile hope, but on truth that has been heard and understood. And from that foundation, whatever you choose to build next, whether love, career, or a new rhythm of life, will carry a different quality. The quality of presence, of respect, and of a happiness that does not need to be waited for, because it begins the moment you choose to live in alignment with who you truly are.